Now, I'm delighted to introduce to you one of our youth storytellers, Natalie Robinson. She was featured in the video that you just saw. Natalie is a senior at Sunset High School. She is passionate and she wants to use her creativity to make the world a better place. She loves her family and her friends and hopes one day to write for a living. Welcome, Natalie.
I have a clear memory of the first time I thought of taking my own life. And even though it scared me, the thought was in my mind and it felt like it would never go away. The idea that I could stop my own heart or keep myself from breathing with such a small action absolutely terrified me. But at the same time, I was obsessed with the idea of it. I was 14 years old. Of course, those feelings didn't emerge overnight. For as long as I can remember, I have dealt with mental health issues. At 4 years old, I was in occupational therapy to deal with my high sensitivity to new sounds, tastes, textures, and environments. Then, when I was 6 or 7, I was officially diagnosed with OCD and anxiety, and now I have been in one type of therapy or another for nearly 10 years. Most people have heard of OCD, and it's often joked about when people are really tidy, but there's so much more to it than having a compulsion to wash your hands 10 times before eating a meal. For some people, this may be the case, but for me, it's a little bit different. I worry my brain is going to make me do stupid or violent things, like start screaming in the middle of the hallway at school or walk right into the middle of traffic. But it's not just in my head. I often have to redo whole sections of my notes or even multiple pages if I don't like the way they look. It's time-consuming, but it's a compulsion, and that's why I do it. I also have an issue with skin picking, and more recently, hair pulling. My skin picking has led to open wounds, sometimes with blood, and if I don't control pulling my hair, it could lead to some baldness, which I really don't want to deal with. The hardest time in my life was middle school. I had some great friends, but there were a few kids who didn't treat me very nicely. They would tease me because I never cursed and do things in class to annoy me. This took a huge toll on my self-esteem, and by the time I was 13, I started showing symptoms of depression. I had been seeing my current therapist for a few years, and she immediately started helping me cope with it. Sadly, I became more depressed, and it really started to interfere with my daily life. It got to the point where I couldn't go to school or after-school activities because of my anxiety. And staying home so much only made my depression worse. It even led me down a path I never thought possible. I started to have thoughts of suicide, feeling like all my friends in the world had forgotten about me, and that I had no purpose. I felt empty, and sometimes it felt like my world was spinning out of control. This feeling started to lessen when school got out, and eventually, with a combination of medication and therapy, I started to climb out of that deep hole of depression. But my constant companion, anxiety, never left my side. I was nervous about high school approaching and worried that I wouldn't get better by the time school started. During that summer, I was a counselor at a day camp, a summer activity I've always looked forward to. But on the 4th day of camp, I was too anxious to go. So I grabbed some scissors and started making scratches on my arms while my dad waited for me in the car. My parents got me in with my therapist later that day, and I remember the exact words she used to turn my life around. If you had cut any deeper, you could have hit a vein and died. At this moment, there was nothing I wanted more than to get better. And I did. I finally started using my coping skills, my doctor tweaked my medication, and I started attending weekly group therapy sessions with other teenage girls suffering from mental health conditions. And still, most people would have no idea what I've been through. From the outside, I look just like every other kid. I hang out with my friends. I read books. I go to movies and listen to music. I'm involved in school activities like track and student leadership. I do all those things while continuing to fight daily anxiety and occasional bouts of depression. I'm fortunate that I'm better at using my coping skills when I'm feeling more anxious or depressed, and can usually get myself feeling grounded again. I'm so proud of how far I've come. I speak openly about my anxiety and depression to my friends, family, and teachers. This has given me an amazing support system. But I've also learned to manage my feelings better. If I feel myself getting depressed, I'll do things to change it. If my anxiety and OCD is going crazy, I use my coping skills. Now, instead of spending all the day in bed, I run track, I write for a local magazine, I hang out with friends and family, I got my driver's license, I'm part of my school's leadership program, and I have a bright future. I never thought this would happen, but it did just because I held on for a bit longer. I've learned that none of this has destroyed me or my desire to live my life to the fullest. And while I know that I may never beat anxiety and depression, I'm equally confident that it won't beat me. It was only recently that I became interested in educating others about mental health, but I have gained so much knowledge about how important it is. If we don't talk about it, we're just feeding the never-ending cycle of silence and isolation. Talking about mental health is still a taboo among many parts of society, and far too many people don't seek the help they need. My grandmother is one of the many people who didn't get treatment for decades. She used to live with my parents, sister, and I, but because her depression got so bad, we had to move her to a small adult care home. But it's just not my grandmother. Mental health issues and alcoholism are scattered throughout my family tree over many generations. They didn't speak about their troubles. They certainly didn't stand up in front of a room full of strangers and share their most vulnerable thoughts. I want to break that cycle. I know I'm not the only teen who suffers from mental illness. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 5, or 15 million American children and young adults struggle with mental illness or a learning disorder, and suicide is the second leading cause of death among that age group. This tells us that mental illness is no small issue. Luckily, organizations like ASHA give me hope that those of us suffering from mental illness will find strength and comfort from society rather than fear and isolation. I know I'm not alone when I say that my mental health has been up and down these past few months. A global pandemic, political and social change, and some wildfires will do that too. I'm dealing with the fact that my senior year of high school will be really different and that I'm hopefully going off to college next year. With all that is going on in the world and change in my life, I know that many people's mental health is declining, whether they already had issues with it in the past or not. If you or someone you know is struggling, I urge you to get help or to be part of that person's support system. When it comes to shattering the stigma around mental health, we need to work together. We need to be kind and check in on the ones we love. If we work together, I know we can break the cycle that has taken so many lives. For those of you who have donated already, thank you. For those of you who are considering a donation tonight, I want you to know that your gift makes it possible for people like me to share my story and impact other lives by giving hope, comfort, and strength. Your gifts make a huge difference in the lives of so many people in our community. By making a gift tonight, you are helping end the stigma around mental health and giving hope to people like me and every person who gets to hear an ASHA storyteller like myself. Thank you so much for letting me share my story.